And what happens in the short and long term is that when that gap continues to be there, we see the inability to repair and renovate, and we also see the inability of reinvestment because there's no money at the end of the day to put new shingles on every 20 years, to replace the windows, to repair that furnace in a quick fashion. And then at the end of the day, we also don't see larger landlords generating enough revenue to build more rental housing units, which is exactly what this province needs more than anything else right now.
This is the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, your home for all things Saskatchewan, all things real estate. Returning guest Cam Choquette of the Saskatchewan Landlords Association here today to talk about rental rates in Saskatchewan and how we've seen a nice increase in the province. But this has also prompted an announcement from the provincial opposition, the New Democratic Party, having an announcement of bringing some more rental stock on, but also having an announcement of potential rental control coming into place. Cam, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge on these two specific topics that I think you're well versed to chat to us about.
My pleasure, Ron. Always good to be here. We've got some politics in with housing today, so it's going to be a great episode.
Very excited. You've made your week very exciting, not necessarily something that you've done, but the provincial NDP had a big announcement, and I think your phone's been ringing off the hook ever since. But just before we get into the announcement by the NDP, I've seen some different stories here, 16%, 18%, but a big increase in rental rates in Saskatchewan. Just walk us through what you're seeing from the Saskatchewan Landlords Association position on the increase in rents.
Well, it's no secret that rents are going up, but I really want people to understand where some stats are coming from. You're likely seeing a monthly report come from rentals.ca and Urban Nation. That's a report all about asking rents. And asking rents are a bit of a misnomer because they only take rents that are being publicly advertised for a vacant unit. Whereas in-place rents, or contract rents as we often call them, are what I negotiate with my tenant after the ad has been taken down. And in-place rents are also just regular lease renewals for long-term tenants or tenants staying more than a year. What we're seeing on asking rents, according to rentals.ca, is that 15 to 20%. However, on the in-place rent side, according to Yardy's latest multifamily report released in July of this year, they're about 8 to 10%. So significantly more moderate increases compared to asking rents. We do understand that 8 to 10% increases are significant for a lot of people. But what we've seen over the course of the last 5 years really is erosion of vacancy and an increase of costs. And our members are telling us everything from property taxes to utilities to even wages for cleaners and leasing agents have all gone up significantly. And costs are primarily what's driving the increase to rental rates, combined with mortgage renewals, as you often know, Ron, and the increased debt service costs that we've seen with rising interest rates. Kind of a perfect storm for traditionally higher rental rates than our province is typically used to.
Mm-hmm. Even specifically on the mortgage side, for a long time, unless you had a variable rate mortgage, you really didn't feel the impact of those Bank of Canada rate increases. But as more and more landlords switch into today's fixed rates, it obviously translates into a big overhead cost on their side. And even things like insurance, Cam, I know you touched on that, but when I talk to insurance agents, they say like the cost of home insurance is drastically increasing, and more so even for condo corps. So yeah, across the board, lots of pressure on landlords on the cost side, and again, translating to increased rents for tenants. And then this prompted an announcement from the provincial NDP, and I think probably a good political move, because I think there's a lot of people out there who are sick and tired of everything getting more expensive, and specifically housing. And so I might miss a few things here, Cam. Please correct me if there's anything that I don't quite touch on. So the provincial NDP, there was an announcement that they're essentially increasing housing stock on basically government housing. And then there's also a proposal around rent control and capping the amount that landlords can increase. Walk me through your take on this announcement, the good and the bad.
Well, first of all, let me say that it's good to have the provincial NDP put a bit of a focus on housing in their platform because we need housing for our growing province. So, I'm pleased to see that they've taken a bit of a microscope to the housing sector and come up with some policy positions. In addition to possible rent control, reinvestment, and renovation of Sask housing units, they also announced direct payment being reinstated for clients on income assistance. And I'm in strong support of that, and our association has been for more than 5 years on fighting for reinstatement of direct payment. And of course, we're happy to see investment in Saskatchewan Housing Corporation units. Whatever we can do to increase housing supply really is what's important right now. Now, when it comes to rent control, you're likely not surprised by the association's position that it's not the right answer. It's not even close to the right answer. Rent control at a time when Saskatchewan needs to build thousands more housing units will only scare away investment, put people's backs up against the wall, and actually decrease the number of units built and the quality of the existing stock. Now, details are scant. I am aware that the provincial NDP is still thinking about, what this rent regulation legislation would look like, and they've assured us that they're going to work with landlords and tenants alike to make sure they get the right fit. But any form of rent control or rent regulation is something that we would not be supportive of, and something that we think and know would hurt the housing sector here in Saskatchewan.
Can you expand upon that, Cam? So, like someone who's not in this space, or maybe they're a tenant and they're watching this and they say, all right, explain to me why a limitation on the amount that my landlord can increase the rent would be a bad thing for me, over even like a long-term time frame.
And if I'm a tenant, I certainly understand the pains of rent increases, but that housing comes at a cost. Property taxes, insurance, utility costs, wages for cleaners. The list goes on in terms of the costs being experienced by rental housing providers. We've seen an increase in crime and property damage. We've seen an increase in the costs of almost everything that goes into a rental housing unit, from flooring to paint, baseboards, doors, and windows. The whole gamut of costs related to operating a rental unit have increased. So what rent control does, it says, Joe landlord, you can only raise your rent in 2025 by 3%. But let's say Joe just renewed his insurance and got the property tax notice from the city of Regina. And combined, he's up 10% on both of those items. 3% and 10% is a big gap between revenue being able to be generated and costs incurred. And what happens in the short and long term is that when that gap continues to be there, we see the inability to repair and renovate, and we also see the inability of reinvestment, because there's no money at the end of the day to put new shingles on every 20 years, to replace the windows, to repair that furnace in a quick fashion. And then at the end of the day, we also don't see larger landlords generating enough revenue to build more rental housing units, which is exactly what this province needs more than anything else right now.
And so then boiling that down, if we look at like what does the province really need when it comes to our housing sector, it is a lack of building. We need more units coming on. And so your fear with this would be a policy that would then restrict the amount of investment going back into the province.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, Broke landlords don't build more rental housing. So we want landlords to absolutely make a little bit of money at the end of the day so that they can reinvest in their properties, so that when a suite turns over, it can get a fresh coat of paint and new appliances if it needs, so that the shingles can be replaced. But also for those medium to large providers that want to expand their portfolios, we want them to be able to leverage capital and revenue to build more rental housing units to house more Saskatchewan people.
I think you kind of answered my last question with even that last point, but the solutions to the current issue that we're facing of increased rental rates, a lack of supply, from your end, Cam, what are some solutions that could be proposed to help this?
Well, we obviously want to encourage more supply, because what we saw 5 years ago when I joined the association was kind of an oversupply, but not a lot, but enough that a tenant could walk down the street, as I say, and negotiate for $50 less if they got a rent increase that they didn't want. There was enough competition in the market that tenants had a bit more buying power, that allowed for negotiation, that kept rental rates very stable. Over the course of the last 10 years in Saskatchewan, uh, save except for maybe the last two, rental increases were actually below or just at inflation for years, which is why Saskatchewan has had the most affordable rents uh, in the country for a long, long time. Now, what we're seeing is that erosion of vacancy. So we need to build more, bring more competition and selection into the market so that tenants have a bit more buying power and rents stabilize over the long term. Other solutions, if affordability continues to erode, is to provide portable housing subsidies, as we call them, directly to tenants. Things like the Saskatchewan Housing Benefit and the Saskatchewan Income Support Program supportive housing stream that provide lower income tenants struggling with rent increases money to help pay their rent. There's also a provision in the legislation that if there are bad actors out there, like we know there are, that if a tenant's, you know, gone NSF on rent, has rent arrears, that they can actually find relief at the Office of Residential Tenancies if that rental increase is to such a level just to displace the tenant. So there are some avenues, in terms of dealing with bad actors, but primarily the solution needs to be building more, and a secondary solution is providing, some rent help to tenants like the province already does.
This would be kind of timely too, Cam. Just walk us through what are the regulations around a landlord increasing rents. And it's not just a willy-nilly thing that tomorrow a landlord can go to a tenant and say, hey, by the way, rent is increasing by $1,000. Walk us through how the rental increase is laid out.
So for new tenants, you can't receive an increase for the first year of your tenancy across the board. For month to month tenancies, if a landlord is a member of the Saskatchewan Landlord Association that we operate here, they can give you 6 months notice of a rental increase, which is one of the longer periods across the country. And they can do that twice per year. So every 6 months, you could have your rent raised. On fixed term tenancies, or as we often call them in the industry, 1 year leases, they are 2 months before the end of that fixed term tenancy. A landlord gives a 2 month notice of intention form, it's called, where they, state the new rental rate. So a bit different depending on the type of tenancy you're in. Month to month, there's quite a bit longer of a notice period. Fixed term leases, of course, typically because they're 1 year, you're only seeing an increase once a year versus every 6 months if the market's moving that much and landlords are adjusting their portfolios that often.
Not to make your phone buzz more than it's currently buzzing, but obviously, where can people go if they have more questions, and maybe even give some resource? If someone's not a member right now, Cam, what would you encourage them to do, and walk us through the process of becoming a member of the Saskatchewan Landlords Association?
Yes, well, we represent rental housing providers of all shapes and sizes, from folks who just have a basement suite or a duplex, all the way up to Western Canada's largest providers of rental housing. By all means, visit our website, www.saskatchewanlandlordassociation.ca. But the bright side of our association is when you call, you get my colleague Landon, you get a real voice on the end of the phone. So if you have questions about anything on rental housing, our team is here to support in any way that we can. Memberships for, just mom and pop landlords are, I think, about $160. So super affordable. A couple phone calls with us, you've got that membership paid for. If we can help you with maybe a tenant conflict, maybe it's a rent increase, maybe you're just wondering where rental rates are at in your city, we're full of knowledge and expertise, and we're super happy to help. So visit our website. You can find our contact information there. We've got an office here in Saskatoon, and we are regularly in Regina if folks want to meet us there as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much during this busy time, Cam, for carving out a piece to chat with us about this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ron. Always happy to be here.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. I hope you liked it, found some value here. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. 2 things before you go. Number 1, if you'd like the chance to win your mortgage payment, simply recommend me as a mortgage broker. The person you recommend, if I do a discovery call with them, you can win up to $2,500 for a win your mortgage payment or to cover off your rent. Simply recommend me as a mortgage broker and you're entered into the draw. Secondly, the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast is teaming up with the Saskatchewan Realtors Association as they host the State of Real Estate coming up in September. If you'd like a discount on your ticket, come say hi to me at the event. Simply enter promo code RON10 when you're buying your ticket, and we'll see you there. Until next week, I'm Ron Caroni, your Saskatchewan mortgage professional. Bye for now.